Something is unfolding beneath the quiet surface, and if you have been sensing it lately, it is not your imagination at all. A final and weighty decision is slowly forming in their heart, and somehow your presence is directly woven into it. On the outside, they may appear calm, distant, or emotionally detached, but a truth they once pushed away has become too heavy to ignore any longer. This is not only about missing you, it is about what your connection awakened within them, and what it forced them to confront about themselves. If you are feeling this final inner shift happening right now, hit like and let me know you are here. They are standing at a major crossroads, and every direction they consider somehow leads back to you in one way or another. For a long time, they tried to distract themselves with routine noise, work pressure, personal pride, and emotional distance, believing that silence would eventually weaken what they felt. But certain connections do not fade just because they are ignored. In fact, the more they tried to suppress it, the more it settled deeper inside them as something meaningful, unresolved, and unfinished. Now they are looking back and questioning the entire story they once believed. Comment shifting if you have been feeling this inner transition in them lately. One part of them feels pulled toward you with a force that is hard to explain, while another part resists because accepting this truth would require complete honesty and the release of emotional defenses that once protected them. They are sitting with their own thoughts more seriously now, wondering why your memory appears so often in their quiet moments and why no one else seems to replace what they felt with you. This is that heavy space just before clarity arrives, where the mind can only resist for so long before inner walls begin to break. If they return, it will be because they finally recognized that a connection like this does not appear many times in a lifetime. And if they choose to walk away, it will never mean you are not enough in any way. Type yes if you want to understand what their silence truly means and whether fear is stronger than truth in their situation. It will only mean they were not ready for the level of emotional honesty and inner transformation that loving you required from them. That is why your role now is not to chase, not to force outcomes, and not to control what happens next. Let truth unfold naturally in its own timing. Let time reveal what words and explanations could not make clear before. What is happening inside them carries real emotional weight and depth. It is not a temporary doubt that disappears overnight. It is an ongoing internal conflict that continues to grow. On one side, there is a strong emotional pull toward you, filled with memory, warmth, longing, and a deep sense of belonging that feels rare and meaningful. On the other side, there is an old protective voice shaped by past disappointment, emotional wounds, and the fear of being hurt again. That voice tells them to stay guarded, to remain distant, and to protect themselves at all costs. These two forces are colliding inside them, and the pressure is becoming harder to ignore as time passes. They may try to hide in daily routines and distractions. They may stay busy with responsibilities or act like nothing is affecting them anymore. But the more they push it down, the more it rises back up. Because the real struggle was never outside of them. It has always been within their own heart and mind. That is why the next step they take carries so much meaning for their future direction. You became a turning point in their life without either of you fully realizing it in the beginning. Even if it was not understood at first, something about this connection challenged the emotional walls they built over time just to survive their past. It reached the part of them that exists beneath control, beneath appearances, and beneath all the careful ways they learned to protect themselves. Now they are facing a choice that can no longer be avoided. They can remain the version of themselves that is familiar and safe, or they can step into a version of themselves that feels unknown, but more emotionally honest. That new version requires courage, openness, and vulnerability that feels uncomfortable for them. This inner conflict is draining them from within. It shows up in the inconsistency you may have noticed, the push and pull, the shifts between closeness and distance, the moments where they seem near and then suddenly pull away again. This is not always manipulation or emotional games. Sometimes it is what happens when someone deeply desires connection but is afraid of the transformation that comes with it. As this internal pressure grows, it starts to strip away old illusions they held about you and about themselves. They can no longer convince themselves that you are just a passing moment or something insignificant. They are being pushed to see you with more clarity than before, and even more importantly, to see themselves differently as well. Old memories return with stronger emotion. Shared moments resurface with deeper intensity. Comment crossroads if you feel they are standing at a major turning point connected to you. Every silence now feels heavier with meaning. Every absence carries more emotional weight than before. This discomfort is necessary because real decisions are not made through avoidance. They are made when confusion starts to clear and the heart can no longer stay hidden behind fear. That clearing process is happening now, even if everything still looks quiet on the surface. There comes a point when uncertainty becomes too heavy to carry, and they are slowly reaching that point. Not because something outside suddenly changed, but because the mind cannot stay divided forever. For too long they tried to reduce what they felt, convincing themselves it was not important and that it would pass on its own. But deep inside, they already know that is no longer true. That awareness is what is bringing everything back to the surface with increasing force. Emotions this deep do not disappear easily. They grow in silence and evolve in absence. They wait until they can no longer be denied. Now these emotions return in waves, during quiet nights, in pauses during the day, in unexpected memories, and in moments of stillness after busy hours. They are beginning to notice how often their thoughts drift back to you without effort or control. Your presence remains like a quiet background feeling in their mind. Distractions no longer fully erase the sense that something meaningful is missing. Your absence has played a powerful role in this process. By stepping back, you left them alone with their own thoughts, and that silence became a mirror. It forced them to face what they lost, the comfort, the emotional spark, and the sense of safety they once felt with you. When they fully feel the shape of that absence, they stop asking whether it mattered and start realizing how rare it was. If you know this connection is not something you imagined, share this with someone who needs to hear it as well. Inside them, fear and desire are now colliding with full intensity. On one side is a warm, natural pull toward you. On the other side is a strong fear of losing control and reopening emotional wounds that were never fully healed. Yet for the first time, desire is starting to speak louder than fear, creating an intense internal conflict that they cannot easily escape. They are still caught in hesitation, not because they do not care, but because they are going through a deep internal struggle that is pushing them toward a breaking point. This is no longer just about a connection between two people. It is becoming a defining moment of identity, about who they are and who they are becoming. Even if they seem distant or unsettled on the outside, do not mistake this as the end. They are realizing that staying in the middle space, neither fully in nor fully out, has slowly taken away their peace. They are now being pushed to take responsibility for their emotions and choices, even if it feels uncomfortable. Comment pull if you can feel them being drawn back toward you, even in silence. What once felt like hesitation is slowly turning into pressure they can no longer avoid. The emotional walls they relied on are beginning to crack under the weight of what they have been avoiding. They are remembering moments where they stayed silent when they wanted to speak, and where pride replaced honesty. The gap between what they feel and what they express is now closing in on itself, making change feel unavoidable. When someone is left alone with their thoughts long enough, truth naturally rises above everything else. That is exactly what is happening inside them now. This shift is not coming from outside influence, but from within. Type awakening if this message reflects what they are going through, because the connection is becoming more present in their quietest moments. It shows up when everything slows down. It returns when distractions fade. and each return deepens their awareness of what this connection truly means. What once felt random is now forming a pattern. What once felt confusing is beginning to feel meaningful. They are starting to realize they were not just missing a person, they were missing the version of themselves that only existed when they were connected to you, more open, more honest, and more emotionally alive. And the pain of being disconnected from that version of themselves is becoming too strong to ignore. This marks a significant turning point in their inner journey, so understand this clearly without any doubt. When someone starts missing who they became while they were with you, the question is no longer whether the connection ever mattered at all. The question becomes whether they are willing to return to the truth it awakened inside them. As this awareness deepens even more, the outer world slowly starts to lose some of its power to fully distract them. They can stay busy with endless activities, surround themselves with people, or throw themselves into work, goals, plans, and constant noise. But beneath all of that activity, there is still one quiet current that keeps leading them back to the same place. Back to you. Back to what was felt, and to what still remains unfinished between you. This is the stage where the protective ego slowly begins to lose its strong hold over them. The ego always wants distance, control, and emotional safety at any cost. But the deeper part of them is now starting to understand that complete disconnection also carries its own kind of pain, emptiness, and silent weight that does not go away easily. And sometimes that hidden pain becomes heavier than the fear of closeness, honesty, and vulnerability. So now they are quietly weighing two possible futures. The safe life they are familiar with, even if it feels emotionally empty at times, or the unknown path that carries risk, uncertainty, and exposure, but also carries the chance of something real, meaningful, and alive. For the first time, the possibility itself is starting to feel more valuable than the protection they once held onto so tightly. That is where courage slowly begins to grow inside a person. Not when fear completely disappears, but when truth becomes more important than fear itself. And with that shift in awareness comes a quiet stillness that begins to settle their restless inner energy. The pressure is still there, but it feels different now, more steady, more focused, and more honest than before. They are no longer resisting every feeling that rises within them. Instead, they are beginning to let those feelings speak without immediately shutting them down. They are slowly accepting that what they feel is real, valid, and cannot simply be ignored forever. And that acceptance brings a quiet sense of peace into their heart. Not because everything has been fully solved, but because the inner conflict is slowly turning into inner clarity and direction. They are standing at the edge of an old version of their life, looking toward a new possibility that feels unfamiliar yet undeniable. And the only bridge between those two versions of life is a single, honest choice they must eventually make for themselves. This is the moment of transparency and deep self-reflection. The silence that once protected them is now reflecting everything back to them with honesty. It is showing them where pride once blocked love, where fear once blocked truth, and where avoidance created distance that never truly needed to exist in the first place. They are revisiting conversations, memories, glances, and long pauses from the past. But they are doing it with more maturity now, more awareness, and more emotional depth than before. They can clearly see where fear made decisions in the past. They can also see the real value of what was naturally trying to grow between you, without force. This is not only about regret or looking backward. It is also about slowly rearranging what truly matters in their life. The things they once placed above connection, such as image, control, emotional protection, and constant self-defense, are starting to feel empty compared to the depth of something genuine, honest, and real. And something else is also shifting in their heart. Empathy is growing steadily within them. They are beginning to feel what their distance may have felt like from your side. They are starting to understand the emotional weight you were carrying while they stayed back in confusion, silence, or uncertainty. That understanding softens a person from the inside. It humbles them gently and makes it harder to continue hiding behind emotional coldness or detachment. Because once responsibility enters the picture, everything begins to change in meaningful ways. They are no longer only reacting out of fear. They are slowly becoming more aware of the role they play in what happens next. They are beginning to become the conscious author of their next steps, instead of just reacting unconsciously to fear and avoidance. And when someone reaches that stage, everything becomes more serious in a deep and grounded way. Not loud, not dramatic, but quietly serious and deeply thoughtful. Because now they understand that whatever they choose next will reveal something real about the kind of person they are becoming. The final layers of hesitation are beginning to dissolve slowly. The old thoughts of should and could are losing their grip. In their place, something stronger is forming inside them, something more certain and more aligned with truth. Comment heavy if the energy between you has felt unusually intense lately, like a sense of must that feels emotionally urgent and hard to ignore. They must acknowledge what is real between you. They must face the consequences of what they feel deeply inside. They must stop staying stuck in emotional paralysis that keeps them suspended in hesitation. Time itself is starting to feel different to them now, more limited, more valuable, and less endless than it once seemed. They are realizing that staying stuck is also a choice, and often the most painful one in the long run. This clarity is not just happening in their mind, but something they can feel physically, especially in their chest and inner body. It appears in the quiet pressure they feel when they think about reaching out, speaking honestly, or doing something real and direct. The unknown still frightens them, yes, but the familiar emptiness of staying disconnected is now beginning to frighten them even more. And that is why movement is slowly getting closer with each passing day. Words that were once held back are rising toward the surface naturally. Actions that once felt impossible are becoming harder to suppress completely, because once truth grows this strong inside a person, silence stops feeling safe or comfortable. It starts to feel heavy, uncomfortable, and even unbearable at times. You need to remember this important point always. Whatever they do next will not come from a random impulse or a passing thought. It will come from a long, difficult, and honest process of finally facing themselves without excuses, without denial, and without hiding. That is why this moment matters so deeply in their life. It is not a temporary feeling that will fade quickly. It is a reckoning that changes a person from the inside out, slowly at first, quietly at first, and then all at once when the moment finally arrives. At the center of everything, there is one undeniable truth that remains strong. You changed something within them in a lasting way. You reflected a part of their potential back to them clearly. You became a mirror, a catalyst, and a steady emotional point during a time when they felt lost within their own uncertainty. Even in silence, your impact continued to exist within them. That is why they are now reaching a deeper level of awareness than before. The noise is fading slowly. The path is becoming clearer with time. The question is no longer whether this affected them deeply, but when they will finally act on what they already understand inside. Layer by layer, their confusion is falling away, revealing a quiet, grounded certainty that they can no longer fully ignore. They now realize that trying to control their feelings only made them stronger, and pretending not to know the truth is no longer a sustainable option. If you have been feeling this same deep shift, trust your intuition completely. Something very real is reaching its final stage in their heart, pushing them toward a decision about whether they are ready to live from truth instead of fear. Your role in this powerful moment is simple. Stay centered, stay calm, and resist the urge to chase what is already being pulled into awareness. Let them feel the full weight of your absence, the true value of your presence, and the real cost of pretending they feel less than they actually do. The person who once hesitated is now approaching a line they can no longer keep crossing back and forth. Like this message if you felt it deeply, comment which part resonated with you the most, and subscribe to receive more messages about this unfolding inner decision, because their internal conflict is slowly turning into clarity, direction, and purpose, step by step. Soon, one undeniable truth will rise above every excuse that came before it, revealing exactly who they are and what they choose to become. When life finally demands courage and honesty, when that moment of clarity fully arrives, it will show that the silence before the truth was never empty at all. It was the loudest and most necessary part of the entire journey. If this message connected with what you have been sensing, hold on to it with hope. Trust the timing of this unfolding, because the next chapter of this connection is already closer than it seems right now.